Tatsuya Imai has until Friday at 5 p.m. to sign a contract, and reportedly, the Braves are interested. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. We talked early in the month about trying to add starting pitching, and I did a whole show early in December about Japanese star Tatsuya Imai. So if you've not watched that, there's both that and a newsletter from, I think it was December 2nd. December 4th. You can go back and check out details on him, but quick brief on who Tatsuya Imai is and why this is a big deal is he is the latest Japanese NPB star to post and try to come to Major League Baseball. 5'11", 155, so a little bit undersized, but has a really interesting pitch mix with good stuff. Throws a four-seam fastball, a slider, a curveball, and then three different off-speed pitches: a standard changeup, a Vulcan change, and a splitter. And had some control issues earlier in his career, but has the best strikeout rate in NPB over the last two seasons. And early in the week, the reports were that his posting window, as close as on Friday, he did not have any contract offers yet. And in some way, I kind of understand MLB teams deciding not to be the first ones to offer deals, simply because he's rep by Scott Boras. And if you are the first person to offer him a deal, they're not going to accept your deal. They're going to turn around and they're going to shop that, and that's going to start setting the floor to be in on the conversations. So I understand waiting until close to the end to actually make contract offers. And I've been pushing, if the Braves want to add a starter who could be postseason caliber, based on what he's done in Japan, I think he could be. It makes more sense to sign Imai and pay the posting fee than it is to pop a qualifying offer on somebody like Framber Valdez, Zach Gallen, some of those other guys, right? The projection that he was given on the Fangraphs tracker, well, I guess not the Fangraphs tracker, John Becker's median projection, where he pulled everybody's projections together, 6 years, $127.5 million. So remarkably close to that $20 to $22 million a year kind of threshold for Atlanta. And we were asking for the Braves to get in on this. We have a report from Tuesday night, freelance reporter Julian Guilarte. He works for LatinoSports.com and WorldBaseball.com. Full disclosure, I know Julian not very, very well. We're not like best friends or anything, but we've interacted professionally. He's a pretty trustworthy reporter. And what he reported, quote, hearing that the Braves are a team to watch for Imai. And reportedly, the Braves scouted him during his high school days, but he did not come over to the States. He was the number one pick in the NPB draft. He became the number one pick in the draft because he just dominated the Summer Kozian, the high school Japanese baseball tournament, and threw a complete game. I think it was like complete game one hitter to win his team the championship, and then went on to be the number 1 overall pick. And reportedly, the Braves are interested in either low AAV for more years or a short-term higher AAV thing. So let's talk about the logistics of this. Let's talk about how this would work and the pros and cons of this. Because what I'm understanding from these reports is that Atlanta would not be doing the 6 for, the 130 or whatever. That's not what the Braves are wanting to do. They're wanting to either pay him a little bit less for multiple years or go short term and pay him more. And I think when you think about it, the fact his agent is Scott Boras, you see the difficulty with this. But you also see the template with this. Reminder that Ha-Seong Kim is a Scott Boras agent or client. And what the Braves did with Ha-Seong Kim, rather than him getting a lot of the typical Boras deals, right? Think about when Alex Bregman went to the White Sox. It was 3 years, $120 million. So very high AAV, listed as $40 million a year. But there were deferrals and there were player opt-outs. And so Boston gave up a qualifying offer pick. So they gave up their second highest draft pick to sign Alex Bregman to this 3-year, $120 million deal. And they got him for exactly 1 year. He opted out of the final 2 seasons and is looking for that long-term deal. Pete Alonso, similar situation. He didn't get the long-term deal he wanted in free agency last year. So he re-signed with the Mets. They didn't lose a draft pick because they were the ones who had given him a qualifying offer. But he signed for 2 years and $54 million. Had a player option for 2026. So he made $30 million this most recent season. And it was like $10 million signing bonus and like $20 million in salary. And then he declined a $24 million option, went to free agency, and signed a 5-year deal with Baltimore. So that's the structure that Boras likes to give his guys. It's not what Atlanta did with Ha-Seong Kim. That kind of structure with the Braves would have been like 3 years, 65 or 70 million, maybe even, like 3 years, 75 with a little bit of deferrals and player opt-outs. And instead, Atlanta just went a straight 1 year, $20 million deal, right? Atlanta did not sign Ha-Seong Kim to any of the extra contract stuff that Boras normally does. Now, again, the agent works for the player, ostensibly. And so that's kind of like, that's arguably, Kim had to agree to it and be okay with it. We don't know what Imai would want. But it feels like, as of time of recording, it's 8:45 in the morning on Wednesday, that the Braves there's a path here, right? There's a path for the Braves to make this signing. There's a path for the Braves to get Imai in the fold in a deal that makes sense for both him and the team. Because there are risks, and I do think this is not a signing you want to do a 1 year deal on if you're Atlanta. So what is that middle ground? What should this look like if the Braves were to sign Tatsuya Imai to a short-term high AAV deal? Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. All right, Tatsuya Imai. If you're adding him to your rotation, pros and cons of the deal. I don't think you want to do the Ha-Seong Kim path and sign him to a 1 year deal. Okay. And the reason for that is the adjustment period to the majors, right? We know that Japanese pitchers, And I'm sure he's been using it, but Japanese pitchers don't play with the same baseball that MLB pitchers do. In Japan, it's a different baseball. The NPB baseball, the size is slightly different. NPB balls feel like they're a little bit smaller. I've seen some as small as 8 7/8 inches, whereas MLB balls kind of seem to be, that's their smallest 9 inches, and at their largest 9 1/4. NPB balls seem to be at their largest 9.125. The baseballs, size-wise, are a little bit different, but I think the bigger difference are the seams. NPB seams are smaller. Like, it's 108 stitches, same as always, but smaller seams mean that the distance, like the distances where they're closer together, the sweet spots, the sweet spots themselves are bigger. And overall, it's a better grip with an NPB baseball than an MLB baseball. There's also that tactile thing. Fresh from the factory MLB baseballs are called pearls for a reason. They're very slick. They're white and very slick, and they're rubbed down with mud in the States to make them a little easier to grip. NPB actually has a tackier baseball. They're not as slick from the factory, and the stuff that they use pregame to make your finger grip is a little bit stickier, tackier. It's not the level of spider tack, right? It's not like the stuff we try to get rid of in the States. But they are easier to hold, and I'd argue probably better to hold. And so, like, there's a fundamental difference in what they're doing baseball-wise. And when you look at some of these Japanese pitchers who transition to the States, you can see how their performance usually improves from year 1 to year 2, and even first half of year 1 to second half of year 1 as they adjust to that baseball. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, 18 games, ERA of 3 in 2024. Now, this is tough because he was injured a little bit, right? But in the second half in his second season, he was a Cy Young finalist. Like, he was much better. He was one of the better pitchers in baseball. And then we saw what he did in the postseason. But he suffered an arm injury in his first season after the first half of the year and missed a bunch of time. He only made a couple starts in 24 before they went to the postseason. Kodai Senga had actually his best year was that first year, and that's the only season he's been fully healthy, was 2023. But when you look at what he did in New York, first half, he had an ERA of 3.31. Second half, he had an ERA of 2.58. So, like, his whip went down, his strikeout rate went up, slug, like, all of that stuff. He got better, less walks, strikeout rate was improved. Everything got better in the second half. There is an adjustment period. Roki Sasaki, we saw how much he struggled. And the question for adding Tatsuya Imai, is he closer to the Roki Sasaki end of this? Signed with the Dodgers as an international free agent, a true international free agent, and actually ended up getting sent down. Like, he ended up getting sent to the minor leagues and pitching for AAA Oklahoma City. And he wasn't really that good in AAA Oklahoma City. Now, again, similar to what happened with Yamamoto, there was injury concerns, right? He pitched through May in the majors, and from there was out for 3 months, right? Didn't come back until mid-August, was in AAA, made 5 starts. They moved him to the bullpen in mid-September, and then brought him back up as a reliever, and he was very good as a reliever down the stretch and in the postseason. When they brought him back up, he made 11 appearances as a reliever in the back half of the season, picked up 3 saves, and allowed a grand total of 1 earned run. Was much better. Does Tatsuya Imai end up on the Roki Sasaki end of the spectrum in year 1, or the Kodai Senga Yoshinobu Yamamoto end of the spectrum in year 1? And we do have to acknowledge that outside of Senga, all the rest of those guys were injured in year 1. They were adjusting to the schedule. We play more games than Japan, and those teams had to work really hard to get them on, right, to try to keep them on that pitching once a week schedule they had in Japan. So there's the roster gymnastics that AA's talked about before. So I would argue, like, one, we don't know. We don't know where Imai is going to end up on that spectrum in year 1. There's a lot of belief that he might be not Sasaki, but he might be closer to that end of the spectrum than to Yamamoto Senga. I don't know why I've done this entire thing and not discussed Shota Imanaga. I don't know why I kind of left him out. 2024 was his first season. Another situation where he was better in the second half than the first half, right? 2.97 ERA in the first half, 2.83 in the second. Not much difference there, but his whip goes from 1.113 to 0.9. Again, am I going to be closer to Imanaga, Yamamoto, Senga, or is he going to be closer to Sasaki? We don't know. But I do think the answer to that question influences the contract offer that Atlanta chooses to give, right? Because if you think he's going to be closer to Sasaki than those other guys, you need him to be here for multiple years. Because if you think it's going to take him some time to be an effective major league starter, and if you don't think year 1 is probably the year that he does it, you either don't sign him at all, or you have to have him for multiple seasons, which means probably paying more to get him for, 2 years or 3 years or whatever, and then him go into free agency, especially when you consider the fact that Boris is going to want him to have the ability to opt out. And if Atlanta's not going to give him that, which I do feel like is the right thing, I am fine if Atlanta holds the line on no player opt-outs. I am fine with that. You sign a contract, you should be here. If you want additional stuff, you can have an increased salary on a club option, and the team can either choose to keep you or let you go to free agency. But I am fine if you hold the line on no player opt-outs. But if you think, like, their determination of how good he can be in year 1 is going to influence this. Because we talked about this before. You have runway to add starters after this season. Chris Sale's contract is up. I still think they'll extend him, or I hope they'll extend him. Lopez is done after 27. You obviously could have a lockout impact next season anyway. So do you give him a 2-year deal? Do you give him a 3-year deal? If you give him a 3-year deal, he can still hit free agency at the age of 30. Does Boris let him sign a 3-year deal? Does Boris have him sign a 2-year deal? I don't know. There's also the question of his size, right? 5'11", 154. Some of the reports that we've gotten, whether it's from him talking to Yahoo Sports Japan, doing a TV interview, or whatever, are that teams are concerned about the mileage on his arm and his size. And, in 9 seasons over an NPB, he has over 1,000 innings. I don't necessarily know if the mileage is that bad from that context. He's shown the ability to put up decent workloads. And, I mean, if you look at the last couple seasons, 163 in 2021. 2022, he did miss some time because of injury, 79 in the 3rd innings. But 2023, 158 innings. 24, 173. 25, 163. He's put up good innings numbers. Some people will argue that means he's due for an injury to take him out. Some people will argue that he's shown that he can post and he can give you innings. Personal preference there. I feel like if Atlanta makes this deal, they're probably, because of Boris, you're probably looking at a 2-year deal. Maybe you can get a 3rd year. Maybe you can have a larger number on an option for the 3rd year, but Boris is going to want him to be able to go back to free agency. And what I don't want the Braves to get stuck doing is to do the Bregman contract structure where Alex Bregman had an opt-out. He signed a 3-year deal. So the posting fee for Imai would calculate that based off of the money for the 3 years. So Atlanta would pay a posting fee on the total amount. And then if Imai was given an opt-out and he opted out, Atlanta wouldn't get refunded that posting fee. You would just be paying the posting fee and then not getting the production that goes along with that posting fee in years 2 and 3. So I think if Atlanta were to do it, they would have to do a player option kind of setup, or just give him more money to get him for 2 or 3 years. I think that's probably the way to go here. We'll see what happens. Reportedly, and this was something late last night from MLB Trade Rumors, Imai has come to the States. The Boris Corporation is based out of Southern California, so they're holding meetings at their offices this week. Part of the reason I waited to record this until this morning is because he arguably needs to agree to the deal by later today or early tomorrow to have time for everything to get done, a physical to be done, and it to be signed and submitted to the league office by 5 p.m. on Friday. Because that is his deadline. If he's not signed, and that means done by 5 p.m. Friday, he goes back to Japan. So I would imagine there will be news breaking, hopefully after the show comes out, but hopefully tonight or first thing tomorrow about the deal. If you're flying out of Atlanta and you happen to see Alex Anthopoulos at the airport, let me know. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball. I'd love to get that tidbit so we can find out, hey, AA was on a flight to LA. Maybe he's going to see Scott Boras and Tatsuya Imai to see if we can sign the kid to a deal. In just a minute, let's talk about the 2026 Atlanta Braves, right? This was going to be an entire show, but I wanted to kind of shortcut that for this. What are proper expectations for the 26 Atlanta Braves? We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Final segment of the show here. I want to talk about the Braves, and more specifically kind of what our expectations are for them in 2026. Because coming off of 2023, you heard a very common trend in the clubhouse, in the media, from the players whenever they spoke in the offseason. Whether it was Braves Fest, private events, even in spring training, World Series, right? Their goal was the World Series. Coming off of the season they had, the regular season they had in 23, and then where they struggled, like in the postseason. They were hungry. They wanted in the World Series picture. Clearly, in 2024, it didn't happen. Injuries on the offensive side. They limped into the postseason and got eliminated. Last year, even worse. Injuries on the pitching side, didn't even make the postseason. So going into 2026, where should our expectations be for this roster? Because on the one hand, it's the most complete roster you've had in years. We've talked about this on the show, right? The bench is the deepest bench you've had in a long time. You have everyday starters at every position now, plus you have high-quality rotational pieces you can rotate in at DH, which give you some injury protection. I do worry about the lefty hitting side of an outfield platoon if you lose a Profar or Acuna, right? Does Dubon end up being that guy in the outfield? I do worry about that if you lose an Acuna or a Profar or something. But other than that, like, you can replace an injured guy or two and still chug along better than you could have in previous years. The pitching staff is deep, right? We were just talking about, like, you have a bunch of guys battling for your fifth rotation spot, but your top four are all guys that look like they should be playoff caliber starters. What do we expect from the Braves in 26? I talk about this a lot on the show, and some of you guys say it's a little too much. The World Series odds. FanDuel has Atlanta as the sixth best odds of winning the World Series. They got Dodgers, Yankees, which is wild to me. The Yankees are up there. Phillies, Mariners, which again is kind of funny. Red Sox, Braves. They moved up, like, they're technically tied with the Mets, but they moved them ahead of the Mets. This is at plus 1,500. So Vegas, and I know that some of this is based on the money that's come in, but Vegas has Atlanta as being top 3-4 in World Series odds in the National League. Is that where they should be? Should they be number 2 behind the Dodgers? What should our expectations be for 2026? And I think what I'm trying to figure out here is you just had 2 seasons where you made the playoffs one time, didn't win the division either year, and in the playoffs didn't win a game. Right? 1 winning record, 1 losing record. Is making the playoffs enough? Say you do it as a wild card. Is that enough? Do they need to win the division for us to be happy with the rebound in 2026? Do they need to make the NLCS? If they make the NLCS and lose to the Dodgers, is that a successful season in the context of it's significantly farther than they made it in the 2 years before? Is making the World Series, if they knock off the Dodgers or somebody else does and they make the World Series, I feel like it'd be hard to argue it's not a successful season if they make the World Series. A lot of this was inspired. Jake and I did a bonus episode for the Locked On All Access subscription, like those paid memberships thing. And we talked for about 15 minutes about the Braves of the 90s. We talked about, in retrospect, do we consider it a success that they only won 1 World Series? And I'll get that video at some point in time for you guys to share that with you. But I'm trying to figure out, like, what does success look like in 2026? Is it, like, on a team level? Is it making the playoffs? Is it winning the division? Is it winning a postseason series? Is it making it to the NLCS? Is it making it to the World Series? Is it winning the World Series? And everybody's probably going to have a different opinion of that. But I think for me, making the postseason and advancing at least 1 round is probably enough for me to be like, yeah, it sucks that they didn't win the whole thing, but they had a good season, right? I'd love for them to win the division. I don't know if in this modern era of baseball, winning the division matters that much. The record of teams that have won their division, gotten a bye in the postseason, and then advanced is pretty small. But I think making the postseason and winning a series is enough for me to be like, yeah, I think this season was a success. I don't want that series win to be a wild card series. I'd really love if the Braves could just win a division, like win a longer series, like a divisional matchup, than win 2 games to advance in a wild card round. But I do think getting back to the postseason and winning at least 1 series is enough for me to be like, yeah, this was a good year. I wish they had done more, and maybe the way that they lose in the postseason would influence this. I'm thinking back to 2020, the 2020 NLCS, where the Braves were leading the series. I think it was 3-1, and It was game 5. They were up 2-0 they were up 2-1 in game 5. In like the 5th inning of game 5, I went and bought World Series tickets. I jinxed it. I totally jinxed it. My mom lives in Dallas. And if you remember that year, the 2020 year, the postseason was happening, the playoffs were going to happen, and you could attend at Globe Life Field in Arlington. And my mom's like 20 minutes from there. So I went ahead and said, well, dang it. I'm going to buy World Series tickets. And so 5th inning, I buy World Series tickets. LA comes back and takes the lead by scoring 3 runs in the 6th. They score 3 more in the 7th to win the game. Atlanta's still up 3-2, and then they win game 6, they win game 7, we don't advance. I have to sell the tickets before the World Series. So maybe the way that they lose will change my mind in the moment. But I think right now, if you make the postseason and you can win at least 1 round, given how the last 2 years have gone, I think we'll be able to say, like, hey, disappointing how it ended, but this was a successful season. Everybody feels differently. The players are going to tell you it's not a success if they don't win the World Series, which is a really tough way to look at it because it's so hard to do that. What do you think? Let me know. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe down below, or you can leave a comment down below. If you're listening to this on audio, tweet at me. You can reach out. A lot of different ways to get a hold of me, the show, all that kind of stuff. I want to know what you think. I want to know what's a success look like for the 2026 Atlanta Braves. Also, if you've got some time, bravestoday.com, subscriptions over there for the newsletter, free or paid, help us out a ton. I'm going to take a break probably the next couple days, unless the Braves sign Imai. If they sign Imai, we're doing a live show on Friday. But if they don't, we're going to take Thursday and Friday off. We'll be back early next week. But the paywall is going to get turned on Braves Today for all the deep dives and stuff when we get to spring training. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the newsletter, now's the time to go ahead and do that, because we're going to start paywalling some content in the spring. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.